Hello. Let's look at this particular question called Navier. Right. I'm not sure which exam kit has this, but it's within this learn signals material. Right. That's what I'm using currently. So yeah, it should be somewhere. And then in this September attempt, a similar question has arrived. Right. So similar question, very similar question, and we need to evaluate ABC. Right. So we need to evaluate impact of ABC, not only ABC, impact of ABC compared to existing costing system. Right. Costing system for customer care on the cost of both type of products. Right. So there is two types of product and what kind of impact it's going to have on the existing costing system, right? How it can basically help us align more our costs more properly, right? That thing is there. Next thing is, in the second requirement, what we are supposed to do is we need to assess the information on each activity, how the information on each activity can be used and improved upon at Navier in assisting cost reduction and quality management, right? So how information on each activity can be used. Next thing, there is two different part. Okay, how it can help improve or help us assist cost reduction and for quality management. Okay, so there is three different requirements right over there, so there is no need to make comments on different product types here. Okay, so just for simplicity, right? So that's what they normally tell you, like it's only assuming that we have only two products kind of thing, or there is no sub product within, like let's say some plastic and non-plastic thing, and then there is only one product of plastic and there is only one product of non-plastic, right? So that's what was there in September attempt. Okay, so I'm not sure if that will be in the how they will post it, when they will post it, but yeah, that's what was there. Next thing, Navier, right? So Navier manufactures what? Satellite dishes for receiving satellite television signals, right? So it manufactures satellite dishes for receiving satellite television signals, right? So it used to be I think it's an older technology, right? It's older technology, but still widely used in very remote areas, right? So it could still be valid in remote areas, right? So Navier supplies the major satellite TV to companies who install, right? So it supplies satellite TV to company who install standard satellite dishes for their customer. Okay, so its customer is what? It supplies to what? To TV companies. Okay, so it's a B2B, right? So it supplies to companies, right? So it's a B2B model at the moment. Okay, and the company also manufactures and installs small number of specialized satellites to individuals or businesses. Okay, so that's like B2C, and then what? And then it's more about B2B as well, right? It's more about B2B, but it's a specialized satellite, right? And then so right, so it's basically resulting from poor receptions in their location, right? So one is a general type, the other is a bit specialized ones, right? So perhaps they might need some special equipment or whatever, right? Next thing, what does the CEO wants? So CEO wants to initiate a program of cost reduction. Okay, program of cost reduction. The plan is to use ABM, activity based management, not ABC. Okay, to allocate costs more accurately and to identify non-value adding activities. Okay, that's what basically ABM is primarily designed to do. The first department to be analyzed is the customer care department. Okay, so that's why they have here, remember in the requirement as well, they talked about customer care. So we could do some kind of profitability analysis. Okay, that thing is already coming in my mind. CPA, customer profitability analysis, right? So as it is believed that for some of the time the current cost allocation is giving unrealistic results for the two product, right? So unrealistic results, right? So why? could be due to standard costing or absorption costing, whatever they are using, right? So let's just see. Next thing, at present the FT, right? So what does the FT do, right? So it absorbs cost of customer care into the product on a per unit basis. So it's a traditional approach, right? So traditional approach. So basically customer care is basically being absorbed based on what customer per unit, right? On per unit. So they basically have what total customer care cost, let's say 100,000, and then their number of devices that they produce is 10,000. So all they do is 10 units per product, right? So that's how they charge it. Okay, so it's given in the data over here as well, right over here in table 1, right? So next thing, so he then tries to correct the problem of unrealistic costing by making rough estimates of the cost to be allocated to each product based on the operations director's impressions of the amount of work of the department. Next thing, he then basically what he does is that he basically absorbs the cost, right, based on per unit basis. Next thing what he does is basically he tries to correct the problem of unrealistic costing. How does it try to correct that? By making estimates of the cost to be allocated to each product based on the operations director's impressions of the amount of work of the department. In fact, he simply adds $100 above the standard absorbed cost, right? So standard absorbed costing is being used, and then all they are doing is just adding $100 based on the assumed work involved at customer care, right? So that's just $100 extra. Next thing, the cost accountant has gathered information for this customer care department in table 2 from interviews with finance and customer care staff, right? So okay, so cost accountant, what has he done? He has gathered some information for customer care department, right? So that's what we are primarily assessing. So she has used this information to correctly calculate the total cost for each activity using activity based costing in table 3, right? So okay, so she has already used it and then done an activity based costing as well, right? So we will look at it, don't worry, we'll look at it. The CEO wants you as a senior management to complete the work required for the comparison of the result of the standard costing to activity based costing for the standard and specialized disease. Okay, so they want for both, right? So comparison of absorption costing to ABC costing. How is it different, right? So next thing, let's look at this. So once this is done, CEO wants you to consider the implications of the management of the customer care process of the cost of each activity in the department, right? So what does he want? He wants the implications of all management, right? Okay, there is a bit of a few requirements, but these are the requirement section, right? And then CEO is also interested, so there is 2 requirements right over there, right? So one thing is implications for management, right, of the customer care process of the cost of each activity in that department. Implications, okay, implications. Next thing, the CEO is especially interested in how the information may impact the identification of non-value adding activities and quality management at Navier, right? So there is 2 and then there is 3, right? So how this information can impact identification of non-value added activities and quality management, right? Implications of management for the customer care process of costs of each activity. Okay, so next thing, what's our total cost right over here, right? So it's like salaries 400, computer time is 150, right? Telephone is 170, right? So stationery and sunrise is 27. Next thing is depreciation of equipment is 36, right? So as you can see, right, so all these are existing costs, so we need to allocate this cost based on activities, right? Activities. So CC is currently allocated to each piece based on 16,000, right? So customer care cost is basically allocated based on 16,000 orders per year, where each order contains at least 5.5 dishes, right? Okay, that's fine, that is absolutely fine. So 16,000 orders at the rate 5.5, how much will that be? Let's just calculate a number of dishes. 16,000 times 5.5, so 88,000, right? So those are the number of dishes. Next thing is the total department cost is allocated using staff time, which drives all of the cost, right? So that means the number 1 point means that 707, or the total cost 707,000, right, is basically allocated to all these things, right? So all 40%, 80%, 10%, 15%, 25%. Okay, so all we need to do is just to 707,000 times 40%, 0.4, right? So that's going to be 28280, right? I mean 2,82,800 or 282,800, right? Next thing, 707 times, what's the other, 10%, 0.1, so it's 707, so it's what, 70,700, right? So once you've done that, and then supervision cost is how much, 15%, 707,000 times 0.15, right? So that's going to give us 106,050. Okay, that's fine as well, right? We don't have any problems calculating all this thing. You see, the total is what, the total is 707, right? So it's just going to be 25% times 707,000, right? So 0.25 into 707,000, that's going to be 176,750, right? So now comes the allocation part. Okay, now here I want you to listen very carefully. So here is the thing that you need to be careful about. Next thing, how do we need to now segregate this total cost to standard and specialized, okay, based on this, right? So next thing what we need to do is the notes. That's where the notes become very important, right over here. So basically, as you can see, so 90,000 of the, so this is relating to how many, 35,000 inquiries, right? Quotes per year. Next thing is basically we need to allocate the cost. Okay, so 90% of the inquiries are for standard dishes, the remainder are for specialized dishes. Okay, so 90% of that, right? So 90% of this cost should be, so 282,800 times 0.9 should be allocated to what, standard, because it's for standard, because 90% of the time is being utilized for standard, right? Out of how much? Out of 40%. Okay, out of 40%, right? So I think you could have even done this way, 0.4 into 0.9 times 707,000. You could have directly got, oops, that's not working. Why is that? 707,000 times 0.4 times 0.9. No, just give me a second. Inquiries and orders. 240 divided by 282,800, right? Okay, where is that? Okay, right over here. So 90% of it is basically for inquiries and orders for specialized, right? Remainder are for specialized dishes. Next thing I want you to look at is this thing first of all. Okay, so specialized takes 20% of staff time. That means 80% is only taking what? So 80% is only for standard. Okay, so this is going to be 0.8. This is going to be 80%. This is going to be 20%. Okay, that's going to be 20%. Next thing. So this is going to be 0.9, or 90%. Okay, you could have found this number directly as well. You could have just done 707,000 times, how much is that? How much is the thing? Inquiries and handling. It's 40%, right? 40%. You get 282,800, right? Or what you could have done is 0.4 is the total time, right? Times 0.9 will give you the total, or 0.8. That's the amount of time that you are allocating to handling inquiries and preparing quotes, right? So that's going to give you 0.32, right? Times, all you need to do is 707,000. Okay, so that will give you 240. Okay, so you could have done it directly as well, but still we need to, it's better to segregate, and then you could have just done it, right? So next thing is 90% and 10%. Next thing is customer credit checks, right? The process for receiving an order, checking customer, supervision of the order is both for the specialized, is same for both of the specialized and standard dish, right? So basically you are processing an order, checking for customers, right? So that's all done once a order is received, right? Okay, so but still, how much time does it take? So all of the inquiries, right? So these are done for, I mean, like I'm looking at this particular order, receiving actual orders. So 90% of it is out of 10% times 0 0.9, 0 0.1 times 0 0.9, right? So 0.09 is basically allocated to what? Is basically being allocated to 90% of it is being allocated to standard dish. So that's why out of the cost of 70,700 we are allocating 90% and then 10% for the other one, right? So same thing, because remember, what does it say over here? The process for receiving an order, checking customer credits and supervision for the order is same, right? So if you are receiving an order, it's a very logical thing, huh? It's a very logical thing. I just want you to think very carefully regarding this. So if you're receiving an order for let's say for the standard dish, of course you are going to do a customer credit checks for that particular product, right? That particular product, right? So basically, if you're receiving the order is for, let's say, standard dish, right? So most of the order you're getting is for a standard dish, then you are not going to do a credit checks for like credit checks will also be done for a customer, but it will be done for that particular product, right? For standard dish only, right? It's a very logical thing, right? Of course, if the customer is trying to order for some like something like specialized dish, then you are not going to do a order or check or credit checks for something else, right? For purchasing, let's say, the standard dish, right? So it has to be logical, right? It has to be the same product. So that's why we can just allocate it based on the same proportion. Okay, so based on 90%, right? So why how did I conclude that it's going to be 90%? So what you can see right over here is that in that notes, right? So there is a very logical step right over here, right? I just want you to think carefully, very carefully. Just think. So the process for receiving an order, right? So process for receiving an order, checking customer credit, supervision of the order is same for both dish order and then for standard dish order, right? So it's just same thing for the product, right? But the actual order that you're receiving, is what? Is basically for standard dish only, right? So you can't allocate supervision of the order or customer credit for different items, right? So you can't basically allocate it for like within specialized, because you are getting inquiries for a particular thing that is standard dishes, right? So it's not for specialized dishes. Okay, so that's why. Next thing, look at the supervision as well. So it's going to be 106050, right? Where is that? 06050 times 0.9, right? So this is also going to be 90%. Okay, why do I do that? Remember the logic right over there. Okay, that's just so point number 2 and 4 is very interrelated. That will give you a hint. Okay, that will give you a hint, a very important thing right over there. So you might be thinking, why 90%? Again, I want you to listen very carefully. I'm going to explain one more time, right? One more time. So basically, logically speaking, right? So if you are going to receive an order, let's say for a standard dish, right? So I'm a customer who's going to allocate, like I'm going to buy a standard dish, right? So I'll make an inquiry for it first of all, right? I'll make an inquiry for it, and based on that inquiry, there will be some staff who will be handling my queries, right? In this case, what's happening is basically I'm inquiring for, like, let's say different customers are inquiring for standard dish and then for specialized dish, right? So we need to segregate that staff time, right? So staff time should be segregated, right? So out of the 40%, so we normally staff time is basically out of the 100%, 40% of the staff time is being utilized for handling inquiries and preparing codes, right? So that's normal for basically a lot of businesses, right? So that's basically normally you have to inquire first, right? So based on that, so again, this staff time can be segregated into two parts. Okay, so it can be segregated into two parts, because 90%, or what is it, 20% of it is for specialized dish. That means 80%, and then 20%, right? So 80% is for standard, 20% is for specialized, right? So what will be so 20%, right? So you can just compute like 707,000 times 40% times 80%, right? You could just do that. You'll get the cost for, or cost of handling inquiries for standard, right? For standard users, for standard dish, right? For specialized, all you need to do is just change this 80 to 20%, right? Because 20% of the handling queries are basically for the specialized dishes, right? So that's why similarly, right, in case of orders, actual orders, right? So in case of actual orders, what has happened is that we receive how much? 90% of the both inquiries and orders are for the standard dish, right? So inquiries is for that, and then but you see it sounds confusing right over here. Both inquiries, 90% of both inquiries and orders are for standard dish. It might sound like that, but what's happening, even though it's 90%, right? Even though it's 90%, but what's happening, the amount of staff time you are using is only 80%, okay? It's only 80% that you're using. 20% is being used for the other one, okay? So 20% is being used for the specialized one. Just because you're getting inquiries does not mean that you're taking that much time for standard dish, right? Because it's already standardized, so you don't need to communicate a lot, right? Whereas in terms of, let's say I'm inquiring about a standard dish, I'm just going, I know all the specifications, all I can say is okay, how does it work and blah blah everything, right? Whereas in case of specialized dish, what happens, you need to talk them through, you need to give them like how customizable can you make and all these things, right? So of course the handling time will be different for that, right? Even though I'm making an inquiry, so even though my inquiry, most of the inquiry from customer is basically regarding standard dish, but the time that takes is very minimal in terms of specialized dish, okay? I want you to think it like that. Next thing, receiving actual orders, right? So in terms of actual order, what they say is that orders are for 90% of the orders. So I want you to forget this thing at the moment, and then 90% of the orders are for standard dish, right? So that means out of the 10%, how much is it? 0.09, or let's just say 90% of it is for the standard, and then 10% is for the specialized, right? Specialized one, right? So next thing, all we need to do is just multiply it, right? So of course out of 10%, so all you can do is 707,000 times 10% times 0.9 or 90%, however you want to do it, right? Same thing for specialized, all you need to do is just change the 90 to 10, right? Next thing, here comes the interesting part, customer credit checks. So you're receiving an order for standard, right? For standard, and then standard, you're receiving order for standard, which is 90% of the time it's for, you're receiving orders for 90%, right? Next thing is basically specialized. So out of all the orders that you're receiving, you're going to do a credit checks, right? Of course that's going to take 10% of your time. That's going to be 70,700, right? Remember, that's going to be 70,700, and out of that we need to segregate that cost, right? So we are clear until over here, right? So customer credit checks, we are clear, right? There is no doubt until there is no doubt. So the number of orders you're getting is basically 90% of it is for standard and 10% is for specialized, right? 10% is for specialized. Of course the cost needs to be segregated based on that same thing, based on the orders you're getting, right? Not on like any other thing, because you can't do 90% for specialized in this case, because at the actual order you're getting is for standard only 90% of it. So we can just allocate it in the same proportion, which you can learn from this particular point, right? So the process for receiving an order, checking customer credit, supervision of the order is same for both the specialized and standard disorder, right? So it's just going to be same for what? For the orders that we are getting. So basically based on orders we are getting how much, 90% of it is for standard and 10% of is for specialized. So it's going to be same thing for receiving order, customer credit checks, and for supervision of that order through manufacturing to delivery. Of course, you are, if I ordered a standard product, the supervisor is not going to check for it's not going to supervise a product for specialized ones, right? Of course, the supervisory cost has to be allocated to the standard ones, right? Of course. So it's going to be same thing. Okay, next thing, I'm pretty sure I've clarified this. I'm pretty sure I've clarified this. Next thing, so 50% of the time is received for specialized disorder complaints, right? So there is a complaints handling. We take 25%. That's quite a number, right? 25%. So all we need to do is same thing again. 25%, so 50%. So all we need to do is 176,000 is the cost. Let's segregate it 50%, 50%, right? Next thing, what else? Okay, okay, this is useful later on. This is useful later on for estimating the cost, right? Okay, that's all done, right? All we need to do is now we can just divide this number. Just divide this number by, I want you to divide this number by how many orders are you getting? How many orders are we getting? 16,000 for an average of that for a average of 6 dishes, right? Standard is 6. 16,000 times 6, right? Next thing over here is contains an average of 1 dish. Okay, each specialized order, right? So let's just figure this thing out. First of all, 537 320 and divide by 64,000. It's 8.39, right? Next thing, all we are doing currently is, right now we are just doing adding 100, right? So 108.39. How many orders are we receiving for specialized dish? 16,000 orders. All right, next thing that we need to figure out is how many orders are there. How many orders are there relates to 16,000 orders. Out of the 16,000 orders, again I want you to use your mind, okay? I think I've already made a mistake right over there, but it's ordering is actual orders we receive is 90%. 90%, okay, into 90%, and then 16,000 times 10%. So 16,000, remember, even we have to figure it out. 14,400, right? 14,400. So 537 320 divided by 14,000. 14,000, how many is it? So 14,400, right? So that's going to cost us 37. What the hell? Okay, let's just do it 37 point something, right? Whatever that is, 169,680 divide by 1,600. So that's going to cost us 106.05, right? 106 point that thing. Next thing is I want you to 16,000 orders, right? Out of that 90% of it is that. So 16,000 times 0.9, it's going to be 14,400. So 537 320 divide by 14,600, I guess, or 400, right? That's going to be 37.31. Let's check our model answer as well, just to be careful, because I'm okay. First thing first, so we have all these things, right? So we need to find the standard cost. Okay, how remember, oh, this thing is what it's for the total. So as per standard costing, currently what we are doing is basically it's 707,000, and then we are dividing it by 16,000 times 5.5. That's for standard costing. I'm just comparing it, making a comparison right over here. All right, 5.5, that's going to give us 8.03, and next thing it's going to be 108.03. All right, 108.03, because we add 100. All right, so that's for specialized one. That's for specialized one. Next thing I want you to consider, next thing is basically on this specialized, on this activity based costing data, I want you to figure out something. Remember, you know what I missed right over here? I missed something called, so it's 16,000 times that 90% times how many orders are we getting? 6 orders, right? Remember, because in this we are only getting 1 order, right? In this we are getting 6 orders per, on average, right? On average 6 orders. So of course that's going to be 64,000 times 0.9. So that's going to be 57,600. So 537,320 divided by 56. Something like that. Let's just do 14,400 times 6. 86,400. Okay, 86,400 right over here, as you can see. And then if you divide the total cost, 537,320, 537,320 divide by 86,400 will give you 6.22, right? 6.22. I want you to practice this again and again. You see, it's going to be, so basically in the standard costing as well, it's roughly near to the same, right? It's roughly same. It's near, very same, right? So the difference is very minuscule. Okay, very minuscule, right? So even in the comment as well, what do they say? What do they say? So when we compare the two approaches, results are not widely different, right? So next thing, right, note is basically what the results are not different, and then many students felt that ABC is more sophisticated technique until surely yield a better result. So it has an issue in the past as well. It is not necessarily the case that suggested alternatives in the question produce better results. Activity based costing takes a lot of time, efforts. So in this case, it had not made much difference, right? Next thing, using detailed ABC, we see that the traditional approach is yielding too high cost, right? Remember, it's yielding a cost of how much? So 8.03, right? As opposed to 6.22. For specialized one, as opposed to 108, no, as opposed to 106, it's yielding how much? 108.03, right? So of course there is a difference. So this will mean that the prices are set on cost plus basis, right? So right now, what's the price? Where is that? So right now, of course, it's for cost plus approach, right? So right now it's for cost plus approach. So then this may make it uncompetitive, right? Because high level, if it is based on traditional absorption costing, could be commercially damaging to the business, right? So it could be commercially damaging to the business, because you will be charging 108 plus, right? So whereas the actual cost is 106, right? So next thing, the fixed costs are absorbed, which means the correcting for over absorption will be required periodically, right? So fixed cost is being over absorbed, right? So which means correcting for over absorption will be required periodically. This will mean that reporting up to the correction point will be stating a profit figure which is unrealistically low, right? Because you are just absorbing it for the different products, right? Next thing, the difference in the unit cost between two methods are relatively minor. It's worth noting that in particular the finance director's rule of thumb is $100 on the cost of standard disk is actually accurately reasonable, right? Reasonably accurate, let's just say that. So when you compare ABC cost, the specialized is basically how much is 106 minus 6.22, so which is 99.83, right? The difference is 99.83, which is very close to the FD, finance directors, right? Next thing, the extra cost of gathering information required to accurately ascertain unit cost, as it turns out, has not yielded different results. This calls into question whether ABC approach is actually more appropriate in this case, right? Whether or not. So it said that it may be considered coincidence that the difference are not great, and that at least working through ABC exercise gives us some assurance as to reasonableness of the calculations, right? So rather than using a rule of thumb such as 100, you don't know like if it's accurate or not, right? Whereas you have a concrete evidence by doing ABC, right? On balance, therefore it is tempting to conclude that ABC exercise was not worthwhile, but should the pattern of cost or cost drivers change, the resulting differences, standard absorption costing and ABC costing may be pronounced. So this will be knowable if ABC exercise is repeated on a regular basis. Next thing, you may also notice the cost drivers are time related. This reflects modern management accounting issue. Had the amount of time required in order to implement ABC is often prohibitive, right? So you see right over here is that this reflects the modern management issue that the amount of information required in order to implement ABC is often prohibitive, right? Cost drivers are what? Time related, right? So hence, what happens? So it definitely reflects the modern accounting issue is that the amount of information required in order to implement ABC is fully prohibitive, because research has shown that a relatively low uptake of ABC may be down to this issue, right? It's the issue of amount of information which is prohibitive because they are all time related, right? So hence time driven ABC is demonstrated here. It's a simplification of ABC to try and make it more practical. Okay, it's relatively very hard in actual scenario. Even organizations are not taking it up. That's why. Next thing, assess how information on each activity can be used and improved upon at Navier in terms of cost reduction, right, and quality management in customer care. Okay, how can it be done, right? So there is a lot of things that can be done. So of the biggest item of the cost relating to handling inquiries and requiring quotes, which account for 40%, right? Remember how many? So biggest cost is regarding handling inquiries and preparing quotes. That's taking a lot of time because it's taking 40% of the time, right? So there could be some automations right over there. I think so. In terms of quality, this activity converts 46% out of how much? 35,000. Okay, 35,000 inquiries, 60,000. So 16 divided by 35 is 46, right? That's why they have given you all this data. So out of 16,000, 3,200 is, again, you're getting complaint out of that, right? The next thing, so this should be compared to other organizations or an industry average, ideally via a benchmarking exercise, right? So it would be a good idea to compare it with other organizations, right, to get an idea of whether that pre-sales process are high quality or not, right? Because whether your inquiry is being good or not, whether your preparation of quote is effective or not. Effective, right? That's it. They have used the word. Ooh. Not only will this improve sales, but it also provide a basis for reducing cost if aspects of the work are non-value adding, right? So a lot of aspects of it could be like non-value adding as well, right? Next thing, Next thing, the next biggest thing is what? It's customer complaints, right? So it accounts for 25% of the cost, right? 25% of the cost, overall cost. So it can be argued that customer complaints is non-value adding activity, in the sense that if the complaints could be minimized, this would reduce the quality of the product, right? This will not reduce the quality of the product. So in the sense that if the complaints is minimized, you see right over here how they are making an argument. If it is reduced, the quality of the product does not get degraded, right? Because even though there is complaints, it does not matter, right? In fact, if the basis of the complaints reduce, this would indicate an increase in quality. However, this may not be interpreted to mean that complaints should be treated in the lowest cost possible manner, because if lower cost methods are not effective, the resulting poor quality complaints handling will lose business, right? So if the lower cost methods are not effective, what will happen? The resulting poor quality complaints handling will lose business, right? The only way to effectively minimize cost in this area is to focus on causes of complaints and seek to minimize them, right? So we need to identify the causes of complaints rather than minimizing the complaints handling cost itself only. So next thing, we could just do like the complaints is high because it's 3200 out of the sold order is 16,000, not 35,000, 16,000. Again, this should be benchmarked whether it's unusually high or not, right? Unusually high or not, given it's a dish kind of thing, right? So of course it could be other factors such as weather and all which is affecting it, and then people are complaining for that by linking it to the product, but it's actually the external factor. It's inherent bad thing within this dish kind of thing. Remember, when there is clouds and all, it does not come in, and then people then can just complain the dish provider for it, and which is not in their control kind of thing, right? So despite this, what about total quality management? So since we talked a little bit about cost control, right? Cost control, cost reduction, and then quality management. So quality management suggests that the target for aim would be 0%, right? So remember, TQM is always about zero cost, right? Zero cost. Next thing, so in terms of quality, so there is something about supervision cost, right? So that's what supervising whether they are made to the standards or not, right? So appraisal cost, you can see, monitoring cost, right? So so it can be improved by analyzing the complaints, right? Identifying recurring problems and then solving it. Next thing is, the third largest item is supervision, right? Supervision, which accounts for 15% of the total cost. So monitoring cost should ensure that they are completed to the high standards. In sense, it is a value adding activity, right? So it accounts for 15%. Monitoring cost should ensure they are completed to the high standard. In sense that it's a value adding activity, this cost can only be reduced effectively without threatening the value add if the underlying manufacture and delivery process are increasingly reliable, right? If it is reliable, then they can focus on prevention rather than appraisal, which may reduce cost overall, right? So they can focus on prevention cost. So having a prevention cost higher is better than having higher appraisal cost, okay? Because prevention cost is what you're producing whenever you're producing product which are not defective in the first instance only. You don't need to check whether it's as per standard or not, because when you're producing it, you are not making any default, right? You're not making any defective product. So of course, having a prevention cost could basically help reduce all this external non-conformance cost as well, right? So basically your internal failure cost and then external failure cost, right? So right before when it's dispatched to the customer, whether it's outside, if it's outside, the cost is even going to be higher, because you're going to have a defective products which you will need to recall, and then after that you have a reputational damage. It's a lot, right? It's going to be a lot, because reputational cost can't be quantified, and then it's very hard to measure as well. Next thing, so the final two categories of cost, right? So we have to, you see right over here what they are doing. I wanted to tell you as well regarding this earlier as well, but you see how the information on each activity, remember each activity, how they have woven. So for each activity we need to they are talking about it, right? So remember they talked about the handling queries and everything, and then they slowly moved on, right? So we need to talk about each activity and its impact, or how it could improve upon the cost reduction and quality management. Okay, so for each activity how it could assist in cost reduction or for quality management, and not or and. So for both of them we can talk about it. Okay, for each individual activity we need to. Okay, next thing, the final two categories is what? It's basically receiving actual orders and customer credit checks are administrative in nature, right? So this could be assessing by looking at the error rate, for example credit notes issued and invoice disputes, right? So the quality of customers checks could be assessed by considering level of bad debt, right? So this cost can be reduced where possible, as they are non-value adding activities for customer, right? So customer credit checks is not a value adding activities for customer, right? So there could be some automations over there, and or it could be like error rate that can be checked as well, right? Because sometimes we get the orders wrong, so that could be there for effectiveness, right? Next thing is the disputes as well, right? So these should be effective. Next thing, comments. What does the comment say? So there are two basic guidelines to remember. Is basically focusing on traditional, it may appear to be more of a F5 question. That's pretty much it appears compared to ABC. However, upon careful inspection you will see that numbers have actually been done. So there is minimal calculations needed in this question. You are told to assume the numbers are correctly calculated. It has been correctly calculated as well, right? So in this paper it looks like F5, right? Whereas what makes this P5 question is the fact that we are using this information to evaluate implications, not just resulting cost per unit. So but on this information could be used to reduce cost and improve quality, right? So in the first part we are required to evaluate impact of using ABC compared to existing system for customer care on both type of products. Okay, next thing, evaluate implies to give an opinion by comparing each costing system and evaluating and the implications of that comparison, right? So we need to evaluate each costing system, which is ABC versus absorption costing, standard costing, right? And then next thing is some calculations are still required, right? Just to just for the basics, right? Just to find out the price and all the differences between the two methods. Remember, this is primarily a discursive paper, so there will rarely be many marks available for numbers. In this case, there is maximum of 4 marks. Ooh. This is typical for P5. The examiner's report highlighted that many students seemed quite surprised. Most of the calculations had already been done and went on to try and overcomplicate what had been done with the numbers. Next thing, the structure approach, at least in the planning process, would be to work down the cost drivers on table 2 on a line-by-line basis. Right, on a line-by-line basis. Remember, as I told you, that we could just talk about this different activities, each different activities, and comment on how information could assist, how it could assist in terms of cost reduction and quality management. Right, very good question, and it has been tested in this particular attempt, which is September attempt 2022. Right, so similar sort of questions where you had to do the thing as well, the calculations itself as well, not the activity cost was not given. Okay, for 13 marks, and there was some commenting thing as well, I guess. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this particular session. Take care, bye bye.